folks, and welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. We've got a full house. We've got Jerry from Northern Ireland, Jamie from the UK, Andy
Hello.
from Andy's Cavern in Scotland, Jules from the UK. Oh, yes, very nice, Jerry. And myself from Canada. Now, I look a little different because I had my usual shave up the sides with a number one, and I became distracted. And then it was like, well, in for a penny, in for a pound. And you'll all notice that my throat isn't that much better. So you'll hear less from me and more from these great guests. I thought, guys, with our schedules being what they are, vacations coming up, summer vacations, etc., that it might not be a bad idea to let people know really what our very preliminary early thoughts are on Canelo Crawford, September the 13th in Las Vegas. Jerry, why don't I hand it over to you, my friend?
All right. This fight is a fight that's not really, it doesn't really appeal to me, if I'm honest. I felt like it's quite a big jump up in weight divisions, obviously, for Terence Crawford. And I know this type of thing hasn't been, it's not like it's never been done before, but to me, it feels like it's a fight that's being made with two big names, because maybe they're looking at things like there's a shortage in opposition for these guys in their own respective divisions. So it just doesn't interest me at all. If I had to, I was thinking about who I fancied in the actual fight itself, and given on the last performance of Canelo, I actually thought he resembled an old man at times, and I know his opponent wasn't particularly exciting and was fighting very negatively, but my
You mean
God,
the previously unbeaten William Shaw?
Oh yes, the legend that is.
Previously unbeaten.
I thought Canelo was walking across that ring like he had cement blocks on his feet. I'm not the only one that's noticed that. So on the basis of, even with the advantage of the weight advantage, I'm going to give the basis on their previous performance my influence over who I think is going to win. I think Crawford could outbox Canelo. Maybe the heavier shots will come from Canelo, but I think Crawford could. Alvarez isn't a high output, puncher, basically. You know what I mean? He's low output. He's relying more on effectiveness of his power and his punches. Whereas I think Crawford's going to be crafty enough and probably would be able to outscore him. You could make a case for Alvarez catching Crawford and potentially getting a knockout, but I don't know who is favorite for this fight. I haven't, like I said, I haven't really been paying attention because it doesn't really interest me. But my pick would be Crawford, and I don't know if that's going against the grain or not. So, if any thoughts, go ahead.
Well, I think that the early money, that smart money, I think a lot of that smart money has been on Crawford, because Crawford's going off at a plus 150, or that's a decimal odds 2.50, like 6-4. So they're giving Crawford a 40% chance of winning at a weight class that he's never fought at. He's never fought at the weight class below either. So the smart money must be seeing something like the same as you're seeing. That's how I'm looking at the odds. I mean, Canelo's minus 179, or that's decimal 1.56. So, you put your $100 on Canelo, you get your money and $56 back. But you would think, first draft Hall of Fame, at that weight, finding somebody never at that weight, I would have thought the spread would have been bigger. But Looks like somebody's seeing what you're seeing.
Well, that's just my opinion, like I say, and it's been very. I didn't know any of that information, so that's me kind of skimming the surface and sort of trying to calculate something just on the basis of what I've seen in the two last fights.
Well, let's see if we can drag somebody else in. Who wants to take a bat at this?
Go on, Andy.
I'm also favouring Crawford. As soon as it was announced, I kind of fancied Crawford in this. His last fight wasn't his best performance, but he was in against a bigger guy, which is a fight. I think he still won the fight, but quite narrow. I think that fight will stand him in good stead going in against Canelo, because he was in against a bigger guy, a young guy, a good boxer, but not as good a boxer as himself, but a bigger, stronger guy. And after he's maybe slightly complacent because he'd scored. I think a lot of his previous fights have been knockouts, isn't they? I mean, one counting here, I've got them in box right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. Retiro. I mean, probably at least a dozen of his previous fights had all been stoppages. So had he taken Madrimov slightly lightly, I don't know. Maybe a slight complacency in that. But I think that will stand him in good stead going forward. Canelo's not what he was, I don't think. I think he's slowed down a bit, especially in the later rounds. I didn't watch the Skull fight because I heard it was garbage, and I'd already watched 2 garbage fights that weekend, so I wasn't wasting any more time.
It was garbage.
I think Crawford's bigger and strong. I know he is coming up weight, he's not fought that weight, but physically he is quite a big guy. I think he's slightly taller than Canelo. So I'm not... Canelo's probably the favourite, but I'm going to go with Crawford on points. That's my prediction. I don't think he's not going to stop Canelo, but he could probably outpoint him. I think he's a smart.
Quick question, Andy. Quick question. Location. Do you think it's important? Canelo in Vegas. That's very much A-side hometown advantage.
Yeah.
It's Is that worth a round going in?
He's a house. He could be the house fighter, couldn't he?
He will be the house fighter.
Going on points is it's a big ask to try to get a points decision against Canelo there. So maybe smart money would be on a draw.
That might be worth a flutter. What troubles me is that I think Canelo knows where Crawford has to be. Crawford has to be in the middle of the ring, moving around. Canelo wants to get Crawford on the ropes. That's not where Crawford wants to be. Belanger, knows that. But yeah, it's. I'm troubled by the odds because I'm thinking that somebody very smart is seeing something, and because I was expecting the spread to be a lot more. So
16-1 for the draw.
Can I just interject there with that a wee second? Sorry, Andy. Crawford's actually a half an inch taller and 4-inch reach advantage. So for whatever that's worth.
I think he's quicker as well, but he's probably less powerful. But don't underrate his power, I don't think.
Oh, Crawford's got better feet. I mean, I think. Well, what do I know? I mean, maybe Julian will advise us who's got the best feet. But to my eye, Crawford looks to have the better legs.
I think Canelo's good at cutting the ring down, though, isn't he? You've got to say that.
Yeah, I was just about to say exactly the same thing, and sorry to jump in without a valid introduction there, Bob. But yeah, like there's a difference between your feet and being able to cut the ring off, and he's got that sort of. It's not even a Mexican thing, is it? It's a Hispanic thing. The machismo, just being able to step a couple of steps, and Crawford's in no man's land. But what I will say. And I'm going with a grain here. We all seem to be nodding dogs with each other, but I've got Crawford winning on points. Andy, you asked the question there, does it make a difference it's in Vegas? It would have done 5 years ago. It doesn't now. And you know why? Because it's a Ring Magazine venture. And that means Turkey, he's not going to have anything disrupting his baby. He's had them both in a room together, breaking bread and eating dinner. And being respectful towards each other. There's not going to be any controversy allowed to perceivably happen on Turkey's watch. He's still building the empire, and he's still building the impression that this is a righteous boxing regime, and we can't have anything disrupting the still and calm waters. So no, Vegas doesn't make a difference.
Jamie,
And
can I ask a
oh,
question about that?
Hmm.
I'm thinking the crowd will be predominantly Canelo supporting. Does that crowd, screaming, does that influence a ref? Does it influence a judge? I don't mean in a really corrupt way. I mean they just, are going to be so much noise for the A side guy. Does that influence somebody at ringside? Do you think so?
well, I think it can, yeah, but this is also where the fighter takes responsibility as well. And Crawford isn't William Skull. Crawford isn't a shrinking violet. He's not there for the payday.
No.
I mean, I think we put a little bit too much in stare down sometimes, but I watched the stare down with Crawford, and I always mention it. I know I always mention it, but it just reminds me of Marvin Hagler. He's got this still, and he looked at Canelo. Most people will, when you look in their eyes, they will when they're in face to face with Canelo, and he's broad and he's quite intimidating. Crawford looked at him and just said, "Look, I don't like swearing on your channel, Bob. I don't give a fudge." That's basically
Yeah,
what he
okay.
looks like there. I don't care. You're not intimidating me. And fighters who weren't intimidated, like Bivol, Crawford's going to give it back. All right, he might not be able to knock him out. And Andy, you mentioned another point. I don't just want to be a disagreeer here, but with Madrimov, did he take him lightly? You've got to remember Crawford has come up from lightweight. There's only so far you can go before, the power makes a difference. So I don't think the power is going to put a dent in Canelo. He went in with Golovkin twice and stood there like Hadrian's Wall. Do you know what I mean? So that's not going to make a difference. But against Bivol, Canelo, when a fighter fights back, he seems a bit unnerved. If he can't control the pace because he's a slow fighter, he's a counter puncher, so he likes things to be, he'll have a look and he likes things to be, under his control. He's not going to get that with Crawford, and I think he's going to be a bit unnerved. He's going to be pushed off balance, and I think with that ramrod jab that Crawford's got, I think that's going to start dictating the pace after a few rounds. And we're going to get little flashy combinations from Crawford because he can be a flashy fighter, and I think that's going to catch the attention of the judges. So that's my pick. Julian, take the floor.
Jamie, quick question. Supposing Crawford, Canelo starts on the front foot, very aggressive. If he comes out, really aggressive, what does Crawford do then? Where does Crawford go?
Well, he's got to start. He's got to start with the lateral movement, hasn't he? But this is where Julian comes in. I'm conceding the point here. Come on, Julian. Talk to me, as Terry Tibbs would say.
I'm not going to break down the fight too much. I'll give you my first reaction, which was opposite Jerry's, actually. So when it was first mooted about 12 months ago, I was a bit not sure about this. But then when the fight was confirmed, for some reason, I don't know if it's just because of the tactics, I loved the fight. I thought, I like the purity of boxing. I'm not as interested in the theatre and the big names at heavyweight. I like, the game of chess with violence, as Lennox Lewis used to say. So I like the fight. I really, really like the fight. So there's a couple of things. One is I'm not going to make a prediction. So whenever I speak to Max, which is quite often, I never really give a prediction until I've seen 2 or 3 weeks before the fight. I like to watch the fighters in camp. I like to look how they're moving. I like to see if they've got that healthy glow about the skin. And I generally will give a solid opinion once I've seen them weighed in. I think the weigh-in for me is a really big telltale sign. And Chris Aston always used to say, I was talking about the weight the other night. Chris Aston always said to me, like, at least 50% of fights are won on the scales. And I think there's an element of truth in that one. So I'm not going to give a prediction just yet. What I am going to say is I always try to think back historically of a fight that's similar to this, when you've got someone coming up through the ranks. And we know he started at 9 stone 9, and obviously he's moving up to 12 stone. Now, that's a big jump. Fighters have gone up through the weights over the years. it's not the same type of fight as Marvin Hagler and Roberto Duran, but there are elements of it that are similar. So we know Duran started at lightweight, that was his best weight, and then he skipped light welterweight, he went to welterweight, light middleweight, and then he moved up obviously to fight Marvin Hagler. And Duran was a special breed, and Hagler was a special breed as well, although the southpaw in this case was a champion. I've been thinking about that fight, and I've been thinking about how Duran's ring craft, certainly for 12 rounds, gave Marvin Hagler fits. I thought Hagler won the fight, by the way, but sometimes when you've got the ring craft, you can give, the bigger fighter fits. But can you do that for the whole of the 12 rounds? And I think that's a challenge for me. I think it's a really fascinating fight. Canelo's output will have to be higher than it is at the moment. But even though they've both got sturdy chins, obviously we've established Canelo's going nowhere. There's no way Canelo's getting stopped or dropped in this fight. There is a chance that Crawford can be hurt. We've seen him stunned a couple of times before. And for me, it's just, is it a bridge too far? So I won't give a prediction. But right now, I give Crawford about a 30% chance of winning that fight. And that's where I'm at right now. I think things will change over the next few weeks. Have we got 6 weeks to go, 7 weeks to go? But there's jumping up and then there's jumping up. And if you think of Canelo, he can handle light heavyweights. He's grown into this huge frame. He's a very, very solid 12 stoner now. And, Crawford and Madrinov, he didn't underestimate him. He just struggled with a bigger guy. I remember when Pernell Whitaker went up from lightweight and he jumped the weights. He looked good at welterweight. And when Whitaker went to middleweight, he just didn't look the same fighter. And I just don't know if the skill set that he's got, and let's not underestimate Canelo Alvarez's skill set. I don't know if Crawford's skill set is greater enough for him to be able to spring off an upset, and that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, I'd like everybody to sort of, think about this. What difference psychologically does it make when one fighter knows that he can be stopped, and the other fighter knows that, look, there's an infinitesimally small chance that I can be stopped. So like Canelo is thinking, I could be, but it's very unlikely. Crawford has to know the higher I go, the greater the chance. What do you guys think about this?
That could also give him an edge with nervous energy. He's going to be more edgy. Maybe. What do you think, Jules? I think it could just make him more alert. Just slightly more alert.
Yeah. Whilst I don't see a one-punch KO in this fight, I think what Bob's asking is a really good question, because he knows his chin is absolute granite. Canelo's chin is granite. He's been hit by light heavyweights and not budged. So there's no way that Crawford's going to stun him or hurt him. He might catch him with some fast shots, but he's not moving him. Doesn't move Madrimov. He's not going to move Canelo. And I always say, when you got the puncher in with the boxer has to concentrate and get it right for 36 minutes. The puncher, and again, I'm not suggesting he's a one-punch knockout artist. A lot of his fights are going the distance, but he'll certainly be the puncher in that fight, because based on his size and everything else, the puncher only has to get it right once. I'm not labeling him a puncher. He only has to be successful for a very, very small moment in that fight, whereas the boxer has to be successful all the way through 12 rounds. That puts great pressure on a fighter.
I think Fabio Wardley proved that very recently, and Deontay Wilder made a career out of proving that.
Well, he actually said that, didn't he, Bob? Deontay Wilder actually said, look, Fury has to be good for 36 minutes. I have to be good for 1 second. So, yeah, it's very intriguing. But, I've tried not to take the floor too much because I like gabbing. So I'm more interested in other people's views tonight.
I like listening to you, James. You carry on, mate.
Oh, well, I like listening to my own voice. Go on.
I think if anybody can do it, Crawford can do it for somebody coming up that weight. I think he's one of the top guys of the modern era, isn't he? So if somebody can do it, he's your man. But he is getting on a bit. I think he's 36 now. So he is at the tail end of his career. So it is a big ask.
I was just in awe of him. I was in awe of him when he fought Errol Spence. I really did think that was a 50-50 fight, and he made it an 80-20. And that's a special fighter. And I certainly agree with what Jules is saying there. And I would, if I was sat down with Alfie's not got a massive interest in boxing at the moment, my son. If I was sat down with Alfie, I would be spitting the same sort of wisdom there. But there's just certain fighters, and we know that I'm on the heavyweight train with Moses at the moment. There's just certain fighters where I look at them and I think, you're special. And all right, that was his sort of more natural weight. But I just think, Canelo struggles against boxers. And Bivol wasn't a particularly big puncher in that fight. He was more of a boxer, and Canelo didn't really know what to do with him. With the feet, yeah, there's a difference between cutting off the ring and using the feet effectively. Crawford's got the feet, and he'll certainly be able to box in the same manner that I think Bivol outboxed Canelo, and I think that's where the intrigue lies, and I think that's why he can sort of saunter to a points win.
It is incongruous to me that Crawford has to be, I would think, the faster man. Crawford is, of course, also the older man. Canelo's been around so long that for these people like me, I think of Canelo as an old guy. But Canelo's 34, and Crawford's 37. He's the younger, smaller guy who's got to be faster. So it's a big ask.
Like that too. Like who's got what's Canelo 63 fights? So sometimes your age isn't necessarily reflected in your age. It's miles on the clock. You know what I mean? So just throwing that out there for whatever that's worth.
Having said that, Crawford's got 41 fights, so
yeah, they're not newbies, are they? I think one of the things what's interesting for me is Canelo really. I mean, I'm assuming Crawford's going to spend the majority of the fight southpaw. I mean, he's a fantastic switch hitter. He really is. He's like I remember when Livingston Bramble beat Ray Mancini. It was probably the best exhibition of switch hitting I've ever seen in my life. And he's that kind of level. Better fight than Bramble, of course, but he's that kind of level in terms of switch hitting. But Canelo can handle southpaws, and I remember watching Canelo training for Billy Joe, and I think it was on social media at the time. That was when it was on, and I called the shot that would do the damage. You could see him working on that right uppercut in training, and I think they've got a clever team. I think Eddie Reneso's a clever guy. I think what I want to see. I mentioned earlier about Duran Marvin Hagler. Hagler showed Duran too much respect in that fight early on. He only really got going and put it on Duran from the 13th round onwards. And I think that's what Canelo needs to do. He needs to not give him too much respect. Yeah, you can't just walk in against a guy of that level. But Canelo's a very smart fighter, but I think he needs to apply more pressure and not give Crawford too much respect. He needs to bully him quite early on, because those rounds start getting put in the bank really, really early on. So I think Canelo's arsenal could be a big problem for Crawford, if I'm being completely honest. We know that Crawford will be outbox him for big periods of that fight, but I think Canelo's arsenal, I think the way he throws that right uppercut, that left up to the body is a brutal, brutal punch. He can flatten southpaws, and he can do it with one shot. Effectively ended Billy Joe Saunders with one shot. And the other guy's name escaped me, who he sparked in one punch, the southpaw. It was, I think it was a 3-round fight. Jamie, remind me, you'll know it.
No, my mind's gone blank. I'm drinking Budweiser, Jules.
Oh, it was a beautiful punch, and he can. I know he's a very tricky fighter, but Billy Joe is a very skilled fighter, and he caught up with him. He really caught up with him. That was a super middleweight. I'm 30% Crawford on this one.
Interesting.
You're thinking of that fighter now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm trying.
I'm not saying he was anywhere near Crawford's level before I get jumped on in the comments. I'm just thinking of the fact that some fighters really struggle with southpaws, but I don't think he'll struggle if Crawford fights the majority of that fight left-handed. I don't think Canelo have too many problems with the stance.
I'm 52%.
Andy, you've got BoxRec open. Tell us.
What do you want to know?
Who did
who was the
Alvarez
fighter?
knock
Who
out
was-
in 3 rounds about 8-9 years ago? It was a beautiful punch.
8-9 years ago. Oh, was it before Kovalev? You've got Daniel Jacobs, Rocky Fielding.
Jacobs? No, Jacobs wasn't.
No. Come on, we're going to embarrass ourselves now.
We've got Amir Khan. It's back as far as Khan.
For that.
Amir Khan. Before that, James Kirkland.
Kirkland.
Kirkland, that was it, yeah. And Wolf, yeah.
It was a beautiful, beautiful right hand, and he set it up fantastically. So he can pick the perfect punch, can Canelo. I understand Kirkland is not Crawford. I even understand Billy Joe is not Crawford, but he can really pick those shots against a southpaw. He will have success against Crawford. Let's not underestimate that.
Yeah.
Would you guys agree with the proposition that for both fighters, this will be their toughest ever fight? Or would you agree that for only one of them? Or do you say neither?
Maybe Crawford's toughest fight. I don't know about Alvarez.
No. That was
What do you guys think?
Golovkin, mate, because he lost both of them, didn't he, Jerry? Let's face it.
Yeah. Nobody else?
Sorry.
It could be Crawford's physically toughest fight.
I would say so.
It's Canelo's technically most difficult fight, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been my response, Andy. That's a great way to phrase it.
No. Mayweather was his most technically difficult fight.
Well, yeah.
In
He
recent
pieced him
time.
up. Yeah. Sorry.
I mean, you are talking about the best fight of the last 30 years, so we'll let you off that one, Jamie.
Mm.
So some people think it's Crawford's toughest fight ever, and nobody thinks it's Canelo's toughest fight no. I guess it would depend. Do you think that Crawford is going to bring technical challenges to Canelo's table that Mayweather brought, or what do you think?
I just think he could outwork him, Bob.
He can outwork Canelo?
Yeah.
I'm seeing a Bivol. As long as he can stay on his feet and stay quick and be a bit like a hare to a hound, I'm seeing a similar performance to the Bivol performance. Twinkle toes and just bop, and get out there. That's what I'm seeing.
In terms of Bivol, I think what we've seen now is a great light heavyweight. I think Beterbiev and Bivol will go down as two of the great light heavyweights certainly of our time. So I'm not gonna judge harshly the fact that Canelo got beat by a younger, fantastic light heavyweight who's as good as he is. I think that was a totally acceptable loss. It was maybe a bridge too far at 175. I understand he beat Kovalev at 175, but there's an older guy. I'm absolutely fine with the Bivol loss, and I think if you stood Bivol right now at the side of Terence Crawford, you'd see a massive difference in size. So I'm allowing that one. Okay. And I'm not going to make a prediction. I'm tempted to, but I'm not. I think size will be size.
It's early days. Sorry. I think we all agree it's very early days.
You'll not get a prediction from me, but one of the best phrases I've heard it was in the early days of mixed martial arts was someone said, size is a factor when skill level is equal, and the skill level is not that imbalanced. I think Crawford is a slightly better, artist in the ring than Crawford, but the size for me could be too much.
Well, my father used to say a good big one will always beat a good little one. I'm sure that's a boxing adage that's been around for as long as boxing. This case, it might actually hold water. Well,
what are we all thinking, Bob?
Guys, unless anyone's got any final word here on this real preliminary look at a fight, we'll obviously have a chance to go into more detail closer to the time. I noticed that we're coming up on our 30 minutes, so respectful of everyone's time, I'd like to thank you all very much for juggling schedules to come on board, and it's great as always to talk to you. So
just going to say, Bob, quickly, what's your prediction?
I think Canelo, I had thought Canelo had a 70% chance. I'm a little troubled by the closeness of the odds, though. I'm wondering, do those heavy early gamblers see something that a layman like me is not thinking about? So I would still, put most of my money on Canelo, but maybe it's worth a cheeky pensioner's bet on a draw or even a Crawford.
Yeah.
But I'm leaning towards Canelo.
Oh well.
So there, and before I close it down here, especially as Andy is right on the screen in front of me, I would like everyone to give Andy's Cavern a sub. Let's get Andy up and over the next hurdle. He seems to have some good merch as well, though mine arrived without any lettering on, or perhaps it has to be bilingual for Canadian broadcasting.
I need to go over 1,000 subs to open a merch shop.
Okay.
Well, gentlemen, thank you all so much. Everybody out there, please like, share, subscribe, and we will see you on the next video. I think my voice is given out, so that's all from me. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Bob.
Good weekend,
Bye-bye,
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Bye bye.
New Zealand.